We are living in a crazy, crazy world. It's absolutely insane what's going on out there right now. So what I put together in this video is a variety of topics that you will not see in the news. And I'm going to cover each of them quickly. It's not going to take very long. I have some video clips for you and that I want to show you that I think you should pay attention to. First of all, just to go over them quickly, we're going to talk about the Epstein Files, what you can expect out of them and what's in there. And again, what you will not see in the news. And then the flu shot. I have a clip of the flu shot. Is it effective or not? Everywhere we go, you see notices, come get your flu shot. Come in right side, you need your flu shot. But does it even work? A new study came out, and the results might surprise you. Then there's a lady that says in a video that we should change our views. We have a responsibility to change how we view pedophilia. And then there's a clip of a pastor who says that abortion is an act of love. So I think it deserves a mention. Finally, we have a lady who talks about a taboo subject. You, as a man, cannot say anything negative about feminism or the feminist movement, but she does. She says feminization is a bad thing. It's a threat to society. So let's get into that. First of all, the Epstein Files. If you've been paying attention, you know that the DOJ has dropped several million pages of Epstein Files, including thousands of videos, the photos on it. People have been digging into that and recovering these videos and emails and documents, trying to find names in it and so forth. Now, there have been some outcomes. People have resigned. There have also been an arrest that I know of outside of the United States as a result of the revealings in these files. But these are mostly because of damaged reputations. It's delicate egos and delicate public reputations that have been injured and bruised. And so there's public embarrassment about maintaining associations with a convicted sex offender after he was convicted and knowingly doing so. And also some of the revelations and things that people said in these emails and in these documents that there's no surprise that they would resign after this gets publicly known. However, I will maintain that we will not see any indictments or any arrests from these files. And the reason is simple. If Jeffrey Epstein was collecting incriminating evidence against his clients for the purposes of blackmail or whatever, then he would not have kept that evidence where the FBI or anybody could find it. He would have hidden it and secured it and made sure it's far away. And so whatever was carried out of his mansion or off of his island by the FBI in boxes did not contain the incriminating evidence against the Epstein client list. That's my position. So I believe when the DOJ and the FBI say that they don't have the evidence, they don't have incriminating evidence to make arrests, I tend to believe them. That's not to say that someone in the government, some entity in the deep state or CIA, that they don't already have those files. That it doesn't say that. They might have made a deal with Jeffrey Epstein, and maybe they do have them. My position is we are never going to see arrests, and I'm going to stick to that. So let's move forward and talk about the flu shot. Is the flu shot effective? Does it work? Well, a new study came out, and Nicholas Hulscher of the McCullough Foundation is going to tell us about it. So watch this video.
Shrestha and colleagues, they looked at 2024 to 2025 flu vaccine efficacy, and they got 50,000 Cleveland Clinic employees, and they followed them for a few months. About 80% got the flu shot, that season's flu shot. 20% didn't. But the 80% that got a flu shot suffered 27% higher risk of developing the flu during flu season. So instead of not only failing and not working, it was increasing the risk of flu, doing the complete opposite of what it's supposed to do.
Wow, 27% increased risk of getting the flu if you get the shot. Isn't it mind-blowing that that's not a headline across every major news, agency in what is supposed to be a country of free press?
Yeah, this should be everywhere, absolutely everywhere. But instead, what we see on the mainstream media is go get your flu shot. You need your flu shot. It's the only way you can protect yourself against flu. But that's all BS.
So did you hear that? When you get the flu shot, you are at a higher risk of getting sick. If you don't get the vaccine, you are more likely to remain healthy. Now, this confirms what I've believed all along. I have stopped taking the flu shot for over a decade now because I just realized that when I get the flu shot, I still get sick and I get horribly sick. But when I don't take it, I tend to be more healthy. That's my experience. But I'm also concerned because the strand of virus that they use for the flu shot of 1 year is a year old. It comes from it's the most dominant strand of the previous season. And by the time they release the new flu vaccine, the virus has already mutated into something else. So the effectiveness of such a vaccine is very questionable in the first place. Secondly, this study, which they conducted over 50,000 people, was for short-term effects, just to see who gets most flu. It did not consider or take into account any other longer-term side effects from heavy metals, toxins, chemicals, preservatives that are also in these vaccines that you get injected with. And what are the side effects of these toxins and things? We don't even know. And also, I don't trust these pharmaceutical companies anymore. It seems that they're not in the business of making people healthy. It's all about money. And if they have a business plan of making money from new drugs, then healthy people go against their business plan. Healing people or making people better is against the business plan. That will not make them more money. It will make them less money. There is really a standard of ethics that have to be maintained by such a company, by pharmaceutical companies, if you want to trust them. But how well are ethics being implemented by these drug companies? And that is a big question. That is the question mark. How ethical are they? Next up, the next clip that I want to play for you is this lady in the black. Now, to me, she looks like she's a witch out of not a Christian church, some other church. But listen to what she has to say about pedophilia.
When we think about pedophiles. But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them. But we are responsible for our actions. And we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people.
Yeah, so it's our responsibility. Did you hear that? We must. It's our responsibility. We must overcome our feelings, our negative feelings about pedophilia. And we must respect, and we have to change. It's our responsibility to change our perspective. That's where the responsibility lies. And to accept pedophilia as just another gender or sexual orientation. So they now call them pedosexuals. The alternative name is MAPS, minor attracted persons. And I've been saying for years that pedophilia is next on the menu. And the reason I say that is because, it's historically now shown that the left keeps shifting the goalposts. If you think that the gender ideology as it is now, this non-binary, gender fluid, these ideologies, that is the end goal, you're sadly mistaken. They will keep pushing the boundary. They will keep shifting the goalposts and inch their way forward to gain more and more ground, and it'll keep happening. It'll never stop. It'll get worse and worse. So pedophilia is the natural next step. It's on the menu. And regardless of all the Epstein business that's been going on and all the things that we're learning about the horrific things that are being done to children, we are going to be expected to affirm and accept pedophiles. Mark my words that not in a too distant future, in a short time, we're going to see pastors, ordained pastors, who identify as minor attracted persons or pedosexuals, preaching from pulpits in churches of major denominations in America. Mark my words, major denominations are going to advocate for inclusivity of these monsters. Mark my words. Next up is this pastor. He's a Presbyterian pastor. Listen to what he has to say.
This morning, I speak from my experience as a volunteer chaplain for Planned Parenthood. Without naming names or breaking confidences, I want to just speak about a few things I've learned from women who've received abortions and candidly shared their story with me. From these women, I've learned something about the who. They're not two groups of women, women of faith and women who have abortions. Most women electing to terminate a pregnancy are religiously affiliated. So I've listened to and prayed with Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish women, with Muslim and Buddhist women, and with conservative evangelical women. And some confided in me that they had never expected to find a Christian minister inside Planned Parenthood. Maybe outside the clinic, protesting, but they hadn't imagined that they would meet a Christian minister inside the clinic, much less offering care and support. From these women, I've also learned something else about the who. They're not two groups of women, women who love children and women who have abortions. Only one group of women exists. Women terminate pregnancies for the very same reason that under other circumstances they carry pregnancies to term and give birth. Because of love. Because of love, and out of their high regard for the value of new life. Love sometimes requires saying no to life rather than yes. That's a difficult truth, not always easy to tell.
If you are as speechless as I am, then we're on the same page. We are living in a alternative reality right now. It's like we're in a Twilight Zone listening to this. So abortion is an act of love. Of course, it's not abortion, it's female reproductive care. It's women's reproductive rights. This is what they call it. And it has nothing to do with reproduction. The Bible clearly calls it murder. If you are at all familiar with what's in the Bible, then you cannot support this evil of murdering babies in the womb. Because right now, the most dangerous place for a baby is in its mother's womb in America. This is a lie of Satan, and this pastor is clearly very, very demonized. And I did not know that Planned Parenthood had pastors, but now they have chaplains. So advocating that this is a loving act. Yeah, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? It's a crazy, 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 crazy place. Now, if you're already advocating for abortion, for pro-choice, then can you see that pedophilia is absolutely not even a big step from that? It is absolutely next, and we will see pedophiles on pulpits saying things like this. If you look up which churches are now advocating for inclusivity of people who identify as LGBTQ and who are ordaining pastors who are gay, lesbian, trans, queer, all those things, you'll find that major denominations have done that, have flung the doors wide open. The Church of Christ, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, the Episcopalians, they've all flung the doors wide open, completely woke, and they are affirming and ordaining pastors who are openly gay, lesbian, queer, trans. And this is the modern church. Now, Paul preached about false prophets and about false gospels quite a bit. We see that quite a bit in the New Testament and the epistles. And so this to me is exactly that. This is those churches, that it's those false religions that are that have now taken over many of the major denominations. If you belong to one of those churches, I would urge you to get out, because this is anti-Christ behavior. This is anti-Christ positions. So it's the beast system at work. So let's get to the next story, and this is Helen Andrews, and she has made a speech about overcoming feminization in culture. And it is something that you will not hear in the mainstream news, and it's a taboo subject. But listen carefully to some of the things that she says. All right, here we go.
The libertarian economist Tyler Cowen once wrote a blog post describing all of the revolutions he's seen in the course of his lifetime, starting with the moon landing when he was a little boy and going up chronologically to today's advent of AI. And there were only 7 revolutions on this list, because this was only the greatest and most earth-shaking ones. And right there, between the fall of communism and the invention of the internet, was something called the Great Feminization. That is not a phrase that a lot of Americans know, but future historians may well rank it as having greater importance than almost any other revolution on that list. The Great Feminization is very easy to define. It refers to the increasing representation of women in all of the institutions of our society. But as simple as it is to define, it's very difficult for those of us on the other side of that revolution to fully grasp its significance. The first thing that most people fail to understand about it is how unprecedented it is in human history. There have been many societies that have been feminist to one degree or another, in which women have been queens and owned businesses and held positions of authority that commanded the respect of men. But there has never been a society in which women hold as much political power as they do today. Think of all of the parliaments that have ever existed, every legislature in every country in every century. None of them has been, as ours is, 1/3 female. The idea of a female chief of police would have seemed very strange even to many early feminists, and yet today the police department is led by a woman in the largest city in America and in the city in which we are now standing. Law schools today are majority female. Law firm associates are majority female. Medical schools are majority female. Women earn a majority of BAs and PhDs. College faculty are majority female. Women are 46% of the managers in the United States, and the white-collar workforce overall, workers with college degrees, a majority of them are women. These are, in many cases, very recent developments, with the tipping point having occurred only in the last 5 to 10 years. And that is the other common misconception about the Great Feminization. People tend to think of feminism as something that occurred back in the 1970s, but it took several decades to go from token representation to approximate gender parity. The first woman on the Supreme Court was appointed in 1981, and in that year, women were 5% of the judges in America. Today, there are, of course, 4 women on the court, 1 justice away from a female majority, and women are 30% of the judges in America, 40% of the judges in the state of California, and 63% of the judges appointed by President Joe Biden. So from the first woman on the court to a likely female majority on the Supreme Court is probably going to be a span of about 50 years. And the exact same trajectory over the same timeline can be seen in many other professions. There was a pioneering generation in the 1970s where a woman was often the only female reporter in her newsroom or the only female professor in her department. And then increasing female representation through the 80s and 90s until a healthy female representation of about 20 to 30% by the turn of the century. And today, 25 years later, in many of these fields, they are now 40% female or 50-50 gender equal. And the pendulum may not be done swinging yet. As feminized as we are, we may get more feminized still. Look at the example of the profession of psychology. As recently as 25 years ago, psychology was a predominantly male profession, up to 70% male. Today, the youngest cohort of psychologists just joining the profession, 20% male. Men have evacuated the profession of psychology. And it's easy to understand why. It's because psychology has become feminized. As women increased their representation in the profession, they reoriented the field to be more friendly to their ideas and preferences, to be about caring and empathy and non-judgmentalism. So a man who wanted to become a psychologist because he liked judging other people would naturally choose a different profession. The same thing has occurred in literary fiction. Some of you may have read in the last 12 months one of several articles in the New York Times about how men don't read novels anymore. And the explanation why, which is very obvious to me, even if it's not obvious to the New York Times, is that the publishing industry is overwhelmingly female, almost 80% female. So men do still like to read novels. They just don't like to read the kinds of novels that today's publishing industry produces. Some fields are more susceptible to feminization than others. There's very little you can do to feminize the field of math or engineering. But as women join a field in greater numbers, we should expect that any field that can be feminized will be, and the dynamic will play out exactly as it has in psychology. It may be that a 50-50 gender split is not a stable equilibrium. I have referred several times so far to feminization without defining what that means. I'll have a lot to say about it in just a moment, but if you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the things that wokeness means. Valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine. So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually got enough women that they were able to reorient them. For example, women are consistently less supportive of free speech than men in surveys asking which is more important, protecting free speech or preserving an inclusive society. Approximately 2/3 of men say free speech, and approximately 2/3 of women say inclusive society. In moral reasoning, the traditional way of phrasing the difference between men and women is to say that women have an ethics of caring and men have an ethics of justice. In making a moral judgment, men will ask, what are the rules and what are the facts? Women tend to be more interested in context and relationships. So let's apply that to wokeness. When James Damore wrote his famous, or I should say notorious memo for Google, arguing that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences might not be the result of bias and prejudice, no one even attempted to argue that he was wrong on the facts. The reason that he was fired was because the things he had written might make his female coworkers feel bad. Or consider the Kavanaugh hearings. The masculine position was to say that maybe something bad happened to you, but if you do not have evidence, then we can't allow you to ruin a man's life and career over it. The feminine position was to say, how can you talk about rules of evidence? Can't you see she's crying? Now, to be clear, many women were revolted by the way the Kavanaugh hearings played out. In fact, the very best book on the Kavanaugh hearings was written by two women, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino. But a political system in which men predominate will tend to operate according to rules of facts and objectivity, and one in which women predominate will tend to operate by the rules of emotions and subjective facts, even if there are individual men and women who fall on the opposite side of those camps. There's a lot more that could be said about sex differences and wokeness, but I'll skip ahead to the controversial part of my argument.
In this clip, she says that feminization equals wokeness. Listen.
Because believe it or not, nothing I've said so far has been particularly controversial. So far, I have only made two claims. One, men and women are different. And two, as institutions become more female, they change in predictable ways according to those differences. I think even most people on the left would agree with that. Feminization is a great example of what Michael Anton calls the celebration parallax, which is a fancy term for anything where you're only allowed to notice something if you think it's a good thing. There are literally thousands of articles out there saying it's great that we have more women judges now because women are more empathetic, or it's good to have more women on corporate boards because that'll make capitalism more humane. It is only when you say women are fundamentally changing the bedrock institutions of our society, and that might be bad, that you start to get into trouble. But I have two actually contentious claims today, and that is the first of them, that feminization is not just an interesting new development that has had some pluses and minuses. It's that feminization, in the case of many important institutions, is a bad thing. In a few cases, it is so bad as to be, to threaten the end of civilization. The rule of law, for example, is a very important thing. It's also very fragile. It requires a deep commitment to objectivity and clear rules.
In this clip, she says that feminization is actually threatening society in certain instances.
Even when those rules yield an outcome that is not nice. I do not want judges who are more interested in context and relationships than in what the law says. Academia is the one part of our society that's supposed to be about finding and transmitting the truth. If it instead becomes about censoring ideas that are dangerous or threatening, then it no longer serves its purpose. In business, if the only way to advance at your company is to behave in the most HR-compliant way possible, that's going to exclude and discourage the very people who are most likely to be leaders and innovators. I happen to think that the most important political issue in America today right now is immigration, and that is a perfect example of a political issue where the elite consensus is highly feminized. We have all of these laws on the books about citizenship and borders, but we're not allowed to enforce any of them if it might make somebody sad. So rule of law, pursuit of truth, borders, innovation. Without these things, I am not being hyperbolic when I say that a thoroughly feminized civilization will set itself on the road to collapse. So that is the first claim, that feminization is in many cases a bad and a threatening thing. The second claim proceeds from a question, and it's a very important question. Can we have demographic feminization in the literal sense without having substantive feminization of the kind that I believe is so dangerous. That is, can we have more female lawyers and judges and academics without having, or while still maintaining the old standards? Because in theory, of course, you can imagine such a thing. There certainly are enough women, there certainly are many women who have the talent and the inclination to meet the old standards. There are many women who are excellent judges. I know many female journalists who are just as hard-nosed and uncompromising as any of their male peers. There definitely are such women, but I am not sure that there are enough of them. Because the question is not, can some women be excellent professors? The question is it possible to have an academia that is majority female and is still as committed to, and still respects the unhindered pursuit of unpopular truths as much as the old predominantly male academia did? I believe the answer is no. I believe demographic feminization does inevitably lead to substantive feminization. It is a difficult thing to confront, but I genuinely believe it to be true. So what does that imply? What should we do about it? I hasten to make clear that I do not propose to ban women from any field or even to discourage them from pursuing their goals as far as their talents and ambitions will take them. I don't think we have to do anything as crazy as that. The only thing that I propose, and I think all that is necessary to solve the problem, is to take our thumb off the scale. Because right now, in ways that many people don't quite appreciate, there is a thumb on the scale in favor of women. The most important example, of course, is anti-discrimination law. It is illegal to have too few women employed at your company. If women are statistically underrepresented in your institution, that is a lawsuit waiting to happen. So companies and institutions give jobs to women that they would not otherwise have gotten, give women promotions that they would not have otherwise gotten, and in a pinch they create jobs that did not need to exist, involving PowerPoint slides, just to get their numbers up. This is why HR departments exist and why they promote gender diversity so assiduously, not because they're ideologues, although they are, obviously, but because they are protecting their company from lawsuits. Anti-discrimination law also mandates that the culture of every workplace be feminized, because if the atmosphere of your workplace is too brash or competitive or combative, that is also a lawsuit waiting to happen, because it is an indication that your workplace is not sufficiently welcoming to women. That is why HR departments are so zealous about policing every interaction and every communication and making sure none of it has any rough edges. So that's agenda item number 1. Get rid of all the HR ladies. Who's with me? Just fire them. And then we'll see how it shakes out. If your company has too few women, that might indicate that you have a problem with your recruiting pipeline. On the other hand, it might not. Either way, we're not going to send a team of lawyers after you to second guess you. It's funny, HR departments are always so careful about making sure the atmosphere at the workplace is welcoming to women. I wonder if they ever considered that maybe their soggy, conflict-averse, nicey-nice atmosphere might not be welcoming to men. The other thumb on the scale, obviously, is the two-income trap. Women pursue careers because they have to for their families to attain a middle-class standard of living. If we address that through various other policies to make it possible for families that want to have one earner to do so, I think the problem of feminization will subside on its own as individuals make different choices based on what's best for their own families. That's just my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's get rid of the two-income trap and give people the choice, and then we'll see what happens. In conclusion, feminization is a sensitive topic. I am acutely aware of the sensitivities because I am, of course, myself a woman. I very much enjoy being a writer, and I would never want to discourage another woman from pursuing the path that I have followed. On the other hand, I am also someone with a lot of disagreeable opinions. So if society becomes more conformist and less welcoming to ideas that are controversial or unpopular, I'm also going to have a hard time of it. The important thing to remember is that it's not about what's best for me personally. It's about what's best for the society I live in and the society my children are going to grow up in. So my final exhortation to all of you is that we should all consider this difficult topic unselfishly, not from the perspective of what's to our individual advantage, but from the perspective of what's best for all of us. Thank you.
Hey, so there you have it. That was Helen Andrews speaking on the feminization of culture, and she says that feminization is the same as wokeness. And she says that in certain categories, feminization actually threatens the existence of civilization. So thank you for watching. Please smash that like button and subscribe. This will help my channel tremendously. And also, I would love to hear back. What's your thoughts on any of these topics? Put it in the comments. I'd love to hear back from you. Thanks for watching. Truth Matters Unplugged.